Hello, and welcome to Anderson Therapeutics Aging Well. This is my channel. My name is Tiffany Anderson. I am a health coach, a health educator, a patient advocate, and a mentor. Today I want to talk to you about joint replacement and fitness. And let me tell you why. One of the things that I have noticed over the years of coaching and helping people to better manage chronic illness is that joint replacement is a daunting experience. And I know firsthand because when I was in my mid-40s, I am 60 now, I was faced with a health crisis that shocked my doctors, certainly myself, and without a lot of warning or notice or any injuries, things like that, I was facing joint replacement. So at the age of 46, I had a hip replacement on my left leg, and it soon became apparent to my doctor and my surgeon that it wasn't going to be too long until I needed one on the right as well. Sadly, when I had the right hip replacement done, because of a fracture and I wasn't healing properly at the 6-week post-surgery mark, I had to have a revision surgery, which was traumatic and really painful and expensive. And during that time, the recovery and being able to take myself from a point in my 40s where I had been very fit, very active, and to have that humbling moment when you have a really invasive surgery that changes your life forever and you become the new owner of fairly high maintenance equipment. I'm very grateful that those type of procedures exist. Otherwise, I wouldn't be walking and having a mobile, active lifestyle. Though the recovery time from that procedure, because I required a posterior placement, for anyone who's familiar with hip replacement, there's a posterior placement or an anterior placement. It changes the way you heal. It changes the surgery. It's a different procedural approach, and it also changes your body in that because I have a posterior placement, there are limitations on how I can and cannot move, especially during those early times when I was healing and in recovery. As I recovered, because as I said, I'm 60 now, those surgery took place in my mid-40s. There was a period of time where it took all of my energy and effort as I was walking on crutches, doing my best to follow doctor's orders, physical therapist orders, physician assistant orders, to be active every day. That's an important part about healing from joint replacement, is that typically the day of surgery, you are up and moving, and that is to help the healing process. You're relearning how to use those brand new joints. I was astonished, and I'll say the word again, humbled by how hard it was just to get down a block and to be winded, exhausted, shaky, and so glad when I made it back home and can rest, ice, and elevate. Giving myself the time and the patience, and to be the good patient, to follow doctor's orders. That was something that I had paid lip service to prior to that, since I hadn't had many injuries or illnesses and very few surgeries prior to my hip replacements. I hadn't even been in a hospital since my son was born, and he's 38. So it was challenging. And if you or someone you love are facing joint replacement, or perhaps you are like me, that you've been living with joint replacement for a long period of time, I hope that you have a great medical team on your side, especially a physical therapist and or those education resources, whether it's your own research or assistance from a nurse, a trusted friend, a guide, your own doctor, to help you formulate a fitness routine, because staying active is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself to maintain the integrity and the longevity of those very expensive new parts that you have. I call myself bionic. In fact, I wrote a book that it's kind of a kitschy title. It's called Butternut to Bionic, a resource guide for hip replacement surgery. The Butternut to Bionic, another story. It's part of my medical mystery tour that brought me to the diagnosis, the reality that for a lot of reasons unknown, the heads of my femurs collapsed. I was given unknown etiology, so I don't really know why or how. That is something unique that I have learned from my surgeon, from being a patient advocate, and with working with others who are living with joint replacement or perhaps taking care of people with joint replacement, that we seem to arrive at that place for very different reasons. I have a good friend that was born with some, defects of the bone. There's hip dysplasia. There's all sorts of injuries. There's fractures, falls. There's any number of reasons that a person may need a joint replacement at some time in their life. And I feel really lucky that when I did need one, that the methods, the surgeries, the technology was out there, that I wasn't being turned away. Because my surgeon had told me at the time that had my health situation taken place even 10 years prior to when I received the diagnosis and the notice that I needed joint replacement, I might have been told, you know what, you might want to wait until you're in your late 50s or 60s, because the joint replacement might not last as long, meaning you would need future surgeries. My surgeon gave me enough confidence that because of the progression that has been made in the medical field, and I'm sure much has changed because I've had mine for a while now. I feel like I'm creating my own little owner's manual for my personal joints and how they're working with me. I want to do my best to take these joints through the rest of my life. And I view them as not necessarily an extension, because it's not as if I'm using an outward mobility aid like a crutch or a cane, similar to when I was recovering and healing and needing that support. They are internal. They have bonded with my bones in that socket. And they're younger than me. So that's where I feel inspired by them. And I'm motivated to take very good care of those joints. And I challenge you, if you haven't come to that point where there may be that frustration, the ache, it takes a lot to get used to those joints. There is a period where the internal movements and the sensations that you're having, even throughout the length of the femur, there's a strangeness, even lifting your leg, of having that sensation of that metal inside your body. Anyone who has any type of large pieces of metal, ceramic, those type of things, it feels different. Now, I suggest that as we take better care of this investment, the surgery, a medical necessity, because I wanted to be able to walk, and I'm sure for those out there who have also had joint replacement, you were highly motivated to have that procedure. We have made an investment in our future. And as we relearn how to use that new equipment, especially as all the rest of our body is going to continue aging. Hooray, aging, not a negative term. Aging means we're alive and still breathing. Yes. And to respect the limitations and, most importantly, our abilities and what we can do. I make it a point to be active every single day, and it took me a long time to get to a point where I felt that I was not going to be anywhere near had to let go and grieve that past high endurance. I had a high activity level before. I have arrived at what works for my body and my abilities now. And I do set the bar fairly high and work with my healthcare providers in order to check myself and what's going on internally to ensure that I'm not putting myself at high risk for injury. I have taught falls prevention, and I practice falls prevention. My surgeon had left me with two important things during my recovery. He said to maintain a lean weight, because even a small amount of weight puts an excessive amount of pressure on even a healthy joint, a younger joint, let alone an artificial joint. Even though the inflammation goes down, the wounds close, the scars smooth. Even after all that period of time, my point is that my health is forever compromised because I have survived, those of us who have had joint replacement, we have survived a very intrusive surgery that has changed the mechanics of our body. And you may or may not have the same amount of equipment in your body. Now that I have had one surgery, which was really successful, and a second that required then a third. I have a lot more equipment and metal on the right side of my body than the left. It took months and months for me to heal from my revision surgery because it was so quick. I mean, it was 6 weeks after I had had the second hip replacement. They needed to go back in and redo everything. That took a lot of time, and that further humbling to show myself grace, to be patient, and to not give up. Setting goals, setting small goals of what I could do, of what I wanted to do and build, knowing that as I worked through the early days of just bringing swelling down, just managing pain, making peace with walking at a slower pace, ensuring that I paid attention to my gait so that I didn't have a limp, being very conscious about where I was stepping, the type of shoes that I was wearing, and any type of fall hazards in my surrounding area. I retrained my brain. That is part of physical therapy right after surgery. And it never stops. It becomes part of your everyday thinking. So as you're relearning to use that equipment and you have an exercise routine, perhaps it's as basic as the physical therapy exercises. Have those ongoing conversations with your doctor and with the physical therapist, with the nurse, with yourself, and decide, is it time that I can push myself a little further? Our bodies are remarkable that we can endure something so extreme and to be able to heal and move with this new equipment at a variety of ages. I have met people much younger than myself that have needed artificial joints, and certainly people much older than myself. And because of the differing reasons, there may be other medical situations going on, we all have our unique aspects that we can also look to when we're considering what type of fitness feels comfortable for us. And to know that by moving those new joints, we are investing in how they're able to continue to help us move over time. So as you customize, I encourage everyone to avoid comparison. As much as you look for an example of some kind, also look to yourself and know that, does this feel right? Understand your body's pain as a message. And are you receiving those messages? Are you needing so much medication that perhaps you're not hearing the messages, that you might you might move yourself past your abilities? Are there ways that you could move that are perhaps more gentle, such as water aerobics, or even a facilitated stretching by receiving therapeutic massage? Therapeutic massage by a qualified practitioner who is well-versed in clinical approaches can manipulate lymph, muscle, and to help lengthen and stretch and relieve tension, relieve pain. The rebuilding takes time. And over time, as we get accustomed to our new, I call it a creaky self. When I wake up in the morning, even if it's the arthritis in my back, plus the joints in my hips, there's a creaky time where I'm a little bit slower and I take my time and I'm patient. There have been times when I'm really frustrated and I'm angry and I'm resentful. Grieve those times. Accept those frustrations as well, knowing that it's natural. And show yourself that grace as some encouragement and taking baby steps. One thing that my surgeon mentioned early on, which really frustrated me, is that the 5th year after joint replacement would be a magical time. And perhaps he was saying this to me for reassurance or to help me set the bar of expectations higher than I wanted it to be. I was told that at the 5 years, the 5-year mark post-surgery, that I would be at peace and more accustomed to my joints, that the bones, the muscles, and with that regular care, the maintenance, following the recovery tips and the physical therapy, that I would feel better and more accepting. That's a better explanation for me, is that I accepted and I missed less my healthier joints. And it is a period of grieving. Now, perhaps for some, if there has been ongoing pain for years and years, or some type of an injury that a hip replacement was a relief and a miraculous solution to a long-standing problem, a health condition that had been so challenging, then of course the perceptions and the reflections on that would be very different. Joint replacement is very unique. And there are many of us who can live with our joints for a long period of time. And some have the hope, the promise that we can take these joints to the end of our life. That is my goal. That is a motivation for me that sustains me and helps me to stay goal-oriented and motivated to move every day, knowing that I feel better when I do. I've invested. I've avoided falling. I have not had a bad fall. I work on my balance. I strength train. I walk. I do the cardio that works well for me, and I avoid any of those movements that would put me at a high risk for dislocation. And if you haven't spoken to your doctor or your surgeon for a while, perhaps you haven't had that connection. There are resources. There are, of course, I would encourage you to reach out, have that checkup, and to know that it is never too late to start moving and to invest in your health, in your mobility, and even by taking a balance and movement course. I taught those through the senior centers and even one through the Arthritis Foundation. Many of them have a very low cost and some offer discounts. With YouTube, here we are, there are numerous courses that can offer exercises appropriate for any ability. And working with someone who knows your medical history and can partner with you because you know your body better than anyone. When you speak to a healthcare provider, remember that fact. That of course their credentials, their background, their expertise, very useful, very needed. And as a partner, it is their job to work with you, knowing that how we feel and how we're going to carry on outside of their office is the most important aspect. Because being the good patient and practicing healthy lifestyle behaviors, lifestyle medicine, those are the everyday acts that only we can implement. And making that choice as an investment, that mindset can change everything. I encourage you to visit my website. I will put the link in the description. There is a handout that talks about 4 proven methods to better manage chronic pain. There's an excerpt of my book. The resources, tips, and tools on my website are free. I share these to help people better manage their health. I hope this information was useful, and I will see you next time. Thank you.